it seems at least once a week we are presented with new details of corruption allegations when it comes to state Labor Queensland. I know my viewers would be up to date with the scandals involving a $700,000 property purchased by the husband of Deputy Premier and Treasurer Jackie Trad, and the $260,000 odd of taxpayers' money given to a company part owned by Annastacia Palaszczuk's Chief of Staff. There have been numerous calls for the Premier to stand down her Chief of Staff and her Deputy while the Crime and Corruption Watchdog investigates these cases. I might add here, it's the same watchdog that the Treasurer picked up the phone and called personally over this matter. This is an issue where my viewers have been raising concerns constantly. Phone calls into the studio, plenty on my Facebook. So for this Friday feedback this week, our Queensland reporters took the street to see whether the opinion of my viewers is a little more widespread. I also asked my Facebook followers what they thought. And joining me tonight to go through it all is a Queenslander himself and Sky News host, Peter Gleeson. Gleeson, great to have you on the show. We've also got a terrific in that it's great analysis, but not so terrific for the Premier, Courier Mail poll that we want to get into a little bit tonight. But before we get into the Queensland stories, Biloela's in Queensland. I know the story about this family has made headlines here and around the world, but nowhere more so than Queensland. Yes, I'm sure people have sympathy for this family, but 7 times the courts have looked at the decision in relation to refugee status of mum and dad, and 7 times it's been knocked back. The eldest child has been knocked back, and now they're trying it on for the younger daughter. Why don't they just go back to Sri Lanka if they really want to move to Australia, come the right way?
Yeah, you nailed it in your opener, Peter. I mean, we'd love to have these people as new Australians. We'd love to see them settling in Biloela, but doing it the right way. And as you say, this has been the most heavily scrutinised. The protocols, the regulations, the framework in which Home Affairs have gone about this 7 times. Not once, not twice, 7 times their application has been looked at, and 7 times we know that it's come back that they have come here illegally. And as I said, we have total empathy for the situation there in Biloela. We have total empathy for the family itself. But if we were to allow these people to stay, as you say, we might as well just open the floodgates again. We've worked very hard to set up what I think is probably the best sort of refugee asylum system in the world. But if we go backwards on this, we'll find ourselves back to square one, back to the Rudd Gillard days.
Yeah, look, this is why the activists are trying it so hard. They want to open up some sort of way in which anyone who has a child in Australia, even if mum and dad don't meet the threshold for refugee status, the children will be a backdoor way in. So I can see why they're pushing it hard. A lot of Rudd's 50,000 are still in Australia. Many of them have children, so that would be now a new way for everyone left in Australia after all those terrible years to stay. Let's get on to some of the Queensland issues. What was the feedback like? I know people contact the show and say, gee, Trad's got to go, and what's with Annastacia Palaszczuk, you know, what's Trad got over her, that the Premier can't stand up to her Treasurer. But that seems to be a more widespread view from what you've heard.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this government is on the nose. Jackie Trad is on the nose, and we're seeing a Courier Mail poll that's coming out tonight which shows that this has really dogged the Palaszczuk government. What I can tell you is that the first poll released a few minutes ago showed that Annastacia Palaszczuk's preferred Premier status has dropped from 47% to 33%. Now, I've never seen a drop like that in Queensland politics ever. Deb Frecklington, as the preferred Premier, is down around the 29 mark. 33% of people are uncommitted. And it comes off the back, Peter, of this terribly smelly investment that the Trad family made in a $700,000 property at Woolloongabba. Now, the reason that this is such a contentious issue is, firstly, the Deputy Premier and Treasurer, who has complete carriage of the $7 billion Cross River Rail project, she failed to declare in the appropriate time, she failed to declare on her pecuniary interest register that her family trust had bought this particular property. Now, that in itself raised plenty of eyebrows. She then, as you mentioned earlier, rang the CCC boss, Alan McSporran, on a Sunday afternoon to say that she had referred herself to the CCC for them to have a look at it. That meant that McSporran had to come out and basically say that he would recuse himself from the probe. Now, the investigation by the CCC is continuing. We expect a decision within the next 3 or 4 days. My sources in Queensland are saying that that Trad is finished, that Kate Jones will be installed as Deputy Premier sometime next week, that Cameron Dick will take over the Treasury role. Now, we were out on the streets earlier today and we asked Queenslanders what they thought of this particular integrity scandal engulfing the Palaszczuk government. It was very, very clear. Let's have a listen to what they had to say.
What do you think about the Deputy Premier? Should she stand down while she's being investigated?
Oh, definitely. I reckon, if it's true, then she should, yeah.
It's a bit hard to believe she didn't know about what was happening, with the property, but...
Yeah, love, you're in Cabinet. You know where these things are going to be put and moved and that sort of thing. The right thing is, if there's a slight bit of overlap there, you don't do it. They're all in it for themselves. They're all in it for politics. No one's come out and done anything for the people of Queensland.
Corrupt, that's what she is. She's very corrupt. Oh, she should, but she won't.
I just see a bit of Bjelke-Petersen stuff crawling back in, where people are lining their pockets. It's simple as that. She should be sacked. Of course she should be sacked.
Now, of course, the problem here, Peter, is that as the minister responsible, as the minister with the carriage of this particular project, she was given access to very confidential, very delicate, as you'd know as the former Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, there's non-disclosure agreements, there's commercial in confidence, and of course the perception is that she's bought this house. One of the recommendations that came before her was that a particular railway line should go across the road from the Princess Alexandra Hospital. That was overruled and it went to the Boggo Road jail site. The Boggo Road jail site just happens to be a lot closer to the house that the Trad family bought. So, there is a big perception issue. These polls tonight in the Courier Mail prove conclusively that this is basically going to cost the Palaszczuk government at the next election. The headline, I understand, will be Jacklash on the front page of the Courier Mail.
Yeah, what's telling for me in all of this is because Trad stays there and the stories just get worse and worse, and obviously there's the scandal inside the Premier's own office with her Chief of Staff, it makes the Premier look weak and impotent, unable to act against the person that for years people have said is the real power in the Queensland government, that, Palaszczuk's little more than a puppet, Trad's the real Premier. This reinforces that skullduggery argument against Annastacia Palaszczuk, despite the fact that she's won 2 elections. She's diminished in all of this. But why someone like Trad, who's been a long-time member of the Labor Party, doesn't herself fall on her sword? She knows, she can see this is causing bleeding for the Labor Party, and if she really cared anything about Queensland Labor, she would go gracefully. But your mail there about Kate Jones likely to be appointed next week and Palaszczuk having to be sacked is an ignominious end for someone who was the Deputy Premier of Queensland.
I think what it does, Peter, it reflects just the mettle of this woman. She is a woman who has always made it very clear that the premiership, that being Premier is her ultimate goal. She is the leader of the left faction in Queensland. The left faction in Queensland have the numbers in Cabinet, they have the numbers in caucus. She, in many respects, has been untouchable up until this point. And I think she's taken the attitude that she'll dig in and hopefully... She believes she's done nothing wrong, but the perception is very much that she's done something wrong here. And I guess to answer your question, Peter, why hasn't she resigned up until now? I think she's probably felt that she could have ridden this one out, but it's very clear. And if you look at that preferred Premier statistic tomorrow, or that's just come out in the Courier Mail, it's very, very clear that Palaszczuk is now the one that is paying for this. People in this state are seeing her as a weak leader because she should have punted Trad a long time ago.
Yeah, that goes to my point, and that's a big drop. That's a 13-point drop. I want to play up on the screen there two socials from my Facebook page, two that really grabbed my attention. Marie in Queensland, this is what she had to say on my Facebook page. Trad should actually lose her job. What a difference. Folau loses his job over comments, and Trad sails blissfully on with her huge pay packet. And Jenny from Queensland, the Queenslanders, I tell you, they're tough on their own. Jenny says, no, I don't trust the Queensland Labor government to run a chook raffle. Jackie Trad should have been sacked. So you're right, mate, it's really hurting the Premier here. We'll see how it all plays out. Now, what else is in that poll? Can you tell me any more, or do I have to get my copy of the Courier Mail?
You're going to have to get your copy of the Courier Mail, Peter, but I do understand that the two-party preferred is not good for the Labor Party. I mean, I think this is the biggest scandal to hit the Labor Party since Gordon Nuttall was jailed for corruption back in 2009. And just before we go, Peter, one other thing about the regions. The regions are hurting at the moment in Queensland. When Jackie Trad came out and said that she was anti-coal and that the coal miners should re-skill, gee, that hurt Bill Shorten on May 18. I think the left in this state have a lot to answer for the May 18 result.
Yeah, and of course, if Labor come back from anywhere, they've got to come back first in Queensland federally, obviously, and clean up this state mess as well. Gleeson, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Pleasure.